What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Tell Me More podcast presented by Major League Success. I have Greg Gleaves with us. He's with the Gleaves home team at Keller Williams Classic Properties. Greg, thanks so much for taking some time out of your day to come on the podcast and just kind of share your journey.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to, every time I have the ability to connect with an agent that I don't know. I always say social media friends, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
we've never connected, in person. And I always love just diving in and having these conversations. Obviously, I selfishly get to learn a little bit more about you and your journey, but really get to see kind of where you want to get to as well with your business. So, Greg, on here, we always start with the beginning. Um, what was life like growing up for you?
Well, I was born around 10:30 at night on June 27th. I think that's true.
I don't even know when I was born.
I think my mom likes to tell it to me because it's like part of the sob story to get her credit, which she absolutely deserves. I wasn't a small baby, but I grew up in Upper Arlington, which is where I live now. So, the joke, if, for the people that are familiar with the Columbus area, I grew up in the bubble and, it brought me right back, just like it's supposed to. But I always joke that I grew up North Arlington, so it's a little different. It's, it's a little more traditional suburbia, so to say.
Growing up was were you into sports? Did you do any, after school programs?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's kind of funny. So I have two kids that are 2 and 4 years old. So my wife and I just last night were having the conversation about what kind of activities they want to, or, should we encourage them / more than encourage them. So my parents had a rule when I was growing up that I had to play at least one sport. I have a brother and a sister. They're 9 and 11 years older than me. So there's a pretty big gap between me.
Yeah.
So I'm like an only child, but with siblings. My brother played soccer, but he's like 6'3" and, skinny and like designed for soccer. So I started in elementary school playing soccer like every kid does, but I realized at some point I was like, okay, I think my body's going a different direction than soccer and I hate running. So I picked up football and then, I kind of had like that middle school. I don't know if I want to, because, that's puberty and, life, blah, blah, blah. My parents were like, you have to play a sport. So I wound up playing football and I played that all the way through my senior year. And then I played lacrosse for 2 years as well. I picked it up late, and in Upper Arlington, lacrosse is like a major sport. So I was way behind. So as soon as they had tryouts, I was like, I'll try myself right out of here. So that was that story. But I did play football. That was my primary sport.
All right. Awesome. What was, did your parents ever explain, I'm just curious, did your parents ever explain the reasoning why you have to do at least one sport?
I think they probably had different reasons individually, but it's a Venn diagram, so there's some overlap. But it was a combination of you have to do something physical, like you can't just be a lump on a log. Truthfully, now that I'm a parent, I'm sure it was like, get out of the house. I feel like that was probably the main motivation.
Yeah.
But it was also learning to work in, some type of, they didn't say it had to be a team sport, but
Sure.
I think that they just assumed no matter what sport, even if it's golf, you're still on a team, you're around peers. And it was about having that experience of success, failure, camaraderie, teamwork. I think that was a big driver behind it. And that's, talking with my wife, with our kids, that's a big driver of where we want to see them, where it's like, these are just experiences that you have to have. There's socialization, there's physical activity that's really beneficial. So I think that was their motivation. And because that's how life works, now it's our motivation for our kids.
Yeah, I don't know how old you are, but I'm assuming you're probably around my age, and that's when, video games and all that stuff started taking over,
Yeah.
My parents were, get out of the house. You only could play video games for a certain number of hours each day. And now I look back, I'm like, man, I could be, if I actually did focus on video games, I actually could be making some decent money. And
Right? That's the funniest thing is like my parents were like, stop building computers. And it's like, I should have kept building computers. But truthfully, I don't know that I academically was going to go far enough that direction to make the kind of money I should. I'm a
sure,
connector. I just happen to have enough acumen in computers to get along.
sure. Yeah, no, and I always, it's funny. I grew up playing sports, and that was my thing as well. And I always relate a lot of things within the real estate business and how I think of things, and our team and so forth as team sports. you
Yeah.
know, and it's funny because I catch myself, in the real estate side. Um, I was just talking to a brand new agent today, newer within the last month or two, about the mental side of our business where we fail more times than we succeed.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, we're afraid at putting ourselves out there to fail in front of others. Yet I think about all the time playing sports, that never affected me. Like, I
Right.
never was like, "Oh, I'm not gonna step on the court, or I'm not gonna step on the field because I may not play well, or I may not win," or it was just like, go out and give it your best. But yet, when I think of, like, the business sense as an adult, it's like, how many times is that feeling just getting, in our ways of allowing us to take that next step? So,
Yeah. It's so true. My mom is in sales and my dad's an attorney. And my mom, I think, was probably the bigger pusher from that sales background of, hey, no matter the circumstance you go through, you know?
yeah,
So, and I
yeah,
completely agree. Our daughter and son both just did soccer, and our daughter is 4, and you can tell soccer's not the sport.
yeah,
And so it was like, okay. And it's tough as a parent to be, especially at that age where it's like, you got to be pretty involved in it as a parent too, even though they're on
yeah,
their own. But the
right,
one thing was like, we can't let her quit, So we finished the season and she played in the leaves more than she probably hit a soccer ball, but at least was going out there. And, one of the big experiences that at that age is the first time that they start playing against each other, and that
okay,
was really hard at first. But it was cool to see her get used to it, and bare minimum, at first it was tough. It got a little bit better, but in my perspective, it's really important for her to see what it's like to have some type of adversity in a
right,
setting that she's already uncomfortable with because soccer's still kind of new. So
yeah,
it's not all
yeah.
about my kids, but that's most of my life. So that's why I sell real estate.
Exactly, exactly. So I want to kind of lead up to high school. Did you go to college? Not go to college? Kind of lead me up to the next couple steps of your life.
Sure. So, in high school, I was going to be a rock and roll star. That was more of the plan. I played several different instruments, and I actually was really into recording music. So I had a lot of equipment for recording, and I would
Okay,
record some friends' bands and stuff. And then the bands that I played in, I would do that as well. College was very much it was not a priority, we'll say, to me, but it was a priority to my parents. So I basically was left it until the last minute, and then I had a buddy that was like, "Hey, I'm going to the University of Toledo. It's open enrollment, and you can live off campus your first year." And I was like, "Sounds cool." So I went there, and I actually initially enrolled under entrepreneurship with a recording technology minor, potentially double major, but they're such different disciplines. I knew it was probably going to be a minor. And I
sure.
wanted to own my own recording studio. That was my game plan. And or party and fail. I don't know. It was kind of like whatever, whatever happens.
What was the now I'm curious, what got you into the entrepreneurship part? What was that like? Because for me, like, sales and being a business owner was never something that I wanted. I just kind of found real estate and have just been doing it ever since. But you mentioned your mom was in sales and your dad was an attorney. Did that play a factor into that? Like, did you already have that entrepreneurship, growing up, or was it just, hey, I feel like I love or I have this passion for, music and recording music, and this is kind of like that next step.
I'm an eclectic individual, so I'm all over the place as far as my background. It's like different seasons of my life or different
Sure.
passion. But it was probably almost genetic, because I remember it's really weird. Like my mom was being in sales was a big factor, because she sold medical devices. So I was used to going out with her. Like I would go on appointments with her. So I saw her selling.
Yeah.
But I mean, she's always been very much a corporate person though. So that's not
Sure.
quite entrepreneurship. But I remember like she would, because of work, always had like laptops, and I was exposed to like the Microsoft suite early. And I don't even know why I did this, but I actually made like a business plan on PowerPoint when I was like 10 years old
Oh,
for this. It was like basically like a Staples ripoff. But like, it was like, these are the products I think people would need. No idea how I thought of this, because I don't even think I would do as well now with it. In my business plan, it was so funny. One day I was driving with my mom just up the street from my house, and there was a company that opened up at this corner, and it was almost the exact same name and business plan as what I had. And I was like, what a ripoff. I don't know if they had like hackers, if they found my business plan, but it was always just, for me, like entrepreneurship was just kind of an inherent thing. I mowed lawns in high school. So, for me, it was with encouragement from my parents. It was about finding ways to make money. But the music part came in where I made money so I could go buy music stuff. So like I was responsible for buying my own recording equipment. So
sure.
that was really the big motivation. And then I had a job starting, I think it was like my junior year of high school. I worked at a buy sell trade place called Trading Zone. And ironically, by this point in time, I was not super fluent in video games. I played just like the cliche ones.
Sure.
But my strength in that role was that I understood business. That was a little more, it's just, like I said, it's more genetic than anything. I know a lot of
Right.
people stumble into it. I was born into it. And then I kept trying to go corporate throughout my life and just keep getting back into entrepreneurship. But at that buy sell trade place, it really kind of helped me hone my acumen of being a business owner, because I was 16, 17 years old. And I basically ran the store by myself. And that's bringing
Wow.
games in on trade. You have to have a margin. You have to know, like, hey, if you're buying a lot of games, you only have so much cash for the day. How much do you think you're going to have in sales? So that really helped me at an early age take on a lot of responsibility that really helped me grow my entrepreneurship that was kind of inherent.
Did they give you free reign to just kind of come up with the pricing of what you would buy, those items for, or was it within, a certain
Yes and
range?
no. I don't. It'd be funny because it'd be funny to hear his perspective, the owner's perspective. So we had what we called the pricing Bible. But what's funny about it is that the pricing, like, I mean, this thing was old, and it would get
Yeah.
updated every once in a while. But like eBay was a thing, but it wasn't. It was a lot harder to price back then. So it was like you had to stick. If you sold based on the price schedule, it was more of a safe bet. But sometimes, man, you got to make business work,
Right.
and it's like, I'm
Right.
not trying to bring in $0 for the day, because it's like, look, you take the risk of, if I go off of the schedule, then I risk him coming in and being like, did you really just sell that for that price? Like, did you want to make $0? Did you want to make some? And also sometimes you got to be a hero, and you have to balance it too, though, because you had to
Yeah.
understand that, like, your pricing, like if you rip someone off, that was never a good thing, because you need repeat customers.
Yep.
Uh, but it was a fine line, but also it was like, come in at the end of the day and you check and you'd be like, did you really sell it for that price? But if you didn't sell anything, it'd be like, did you really make no sales? So,
Yeah.
you balance it, but it was also good too, because it was a good experience for me to learn how to justify my actions. And I
I was
felt
gonna.
pretty,
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm pretty sure it's that probably has had a pretty big impact on your real estate business.
it definitely has, it's, you make business decisions, and I feel strong in justifying my price point.
Yeah. It's one of those things I talk to a lot of agents about. Um, I believe the majority of people, real estate's not their first career, right? It's not like, oh, I'm graduating high school or I'm graduating college. I'm just getting into real estate. And, I went to school for it in college. Most people, it's not like that, right? It's like their second, third, fourth career,
Yep.
and they just happen to, do real estate, fall in love with it. And I think a lot of agents don't have the business mindset. I didn't. The only thing that has really helped me is my mentor, right?
Yeah.
Now 11 years later, with still being with him, it's like, yeah, I've learned so much over the 11 years, but most people, I would assume, aren't walking into this business with the business mindset, how to run a P&L and do all of those things, let alone, pricing out, making those business decisions. When I talk to agents about like having to pay a referral fee or whatever, or paying money to go and get a client, that's called that's a cost of sales, right? Cost of
Yep.
doing business,
Yeah.
and to your point, you can't rip someone off or, give them a bad experience or whatever, because the value is in the repeat business.
Right. Yeah. It's funny because I just was explaining to someone who it's investor season right now, right? So, I was explaining like, hey, like you look at the numbers this way, but you also have to understand that there's an acquisition cost to every client.
Yeah.
And it's not just acquiring new clients, it's also retention, because they kind of wind up in real estate. I mean, honestly, it's like so hard to be like, these people came from this postcard. It
Right.
doesn't
Right. Not
sometimes.
anymore. Not
Yeah.
anymore.
So, it's this, accumulation. It's like you have to understand that the acquisition cost of a client could be thousands of dollars, or the retention cost could be thousands of dollars. How many postcards did I send to these people? Client gifts at the end of the year, et cetera. So it's like, look, all you see is this end number, but what I see is the business plan that I've been executing and the amount of money that I've put into the marketing to make sure that they used me. And especially with the market that we've had the last several years, it's like that they use me, not their cousin who just got their license. And, I support
Right.
using family. I don't know that my family always supports using me. But but I support it. But at the same time, also, like if I have the best tools to help someone, I want to make sure that they use me and that they remember
Yep.
it. But that takes money.
Yep. Yep. Greg, kind of lead me into, did you graduate college, and then kind of your next couple things. So as you mentioned that you always try to go corporate, and you kept getting sucked back into the entrepreneurship side. So lead me up to that path of,
Sure.
college to real estate.
Sorry, I jump ahead a lot, don't I?
No, you're good. No, I love it.
So college, my first semester, I wound up getting like a 3.9, and I was like, okay, I guess I won't fail out. And by the time that I went to declare for entrepreneurship as a major, they had changed it so it wasn't available as a major. It was available as a minor. And I didn't want to lose those classes because they were some of the most interesting classes for me. So I ended up switching to organizational development, which is effectively business management, people management, not HR, but working with people.
Sure.
So that was my major. Minor in entrepreneurship, fell one credit short of my recording technology minor. My roommate at the time was teaching that class. So I was like, look, I probably am not going to own a recording studio by that point in time.
Yeah.
I had lots of fun in college, but also started getting really involved in like business fraternity, social fraternity, some for fun, some for, the resume, all that good stuff.
Sure.
Graduated undergrad in 2009, which was a pretty rough time. So I wound up sticking around for another year and just got my master's. I got it paid for through a grad assistantship. And then after that, I went into, this is actually super ironic. My grad assistantship job was to help people get corporate jobs. And I was actually pretty decent at it. I understood the game well enough.
Sure.
So then I went and got a job selling payroll, because I wanted to do what my mom did, which was medical device sales. Right before that point in time, it used to be you had to go into pharmaceutical sales. but
Sure.
that path was starting to have a different connotation. So basically everyone said, you have to go take the hardest job in sales and prove yourself. And that was selling payroll. But the funny thing is, I hated selling payroll.
Explain that. Explain what selling payroll is, just real quick.
So
Simple
payroll
version.
services, so like you may for your team have payroll. So, you have like Paychex is who I worked for, ADP, Paycor. There's a billion of them now. And it's
Okay.
payroll services so that you can cut checks. They calculate all of your taxes and basically take that burden off that almost never as a small business owner you're doing yourself, but you pay an accountant. But if you have the economies of scale of a large payroll company, it's usually more cost effective.
So they're like the software behind.
Yeah, primarily, but we sold the people too.
Sure.
But that job, it was not my gig. I have tons of respect because I actually met some really good people. But after like 3 months, I knew I was like, this is not what I want to do. But it was still a pretty bad economy. I had bought a house actually right when I graduated. My parents helped me, and I bought a complete fixer-upper in Dublin. Actually, it's not true. It was straight 1980s. It was very satisfactory to the previous owners, but bought it with the intent that, essentially it would just didn't want to flip it. I didn't really even think of flipping at the time because it was 2010, 2011. But it was just make it new, learn some skills, practice some stuff. And so I lived in that house, and that was this is where it gets a little cliche. When I was like, I want to go a different direction, I wound up thinking of real estate because I was like, hey, I really enjoyed the process of buying a home and working on it. So my realtor at the time, I reached out to her. She basically was like, hey, it's a harder job than you might think, but you could probably do well at it if you wanted. And I was looking for something to be an entrepreneur, but have some bumpers to it, which one of the things I wound up being right. I didn't know enough at the time to know that I was right. But in real estate, it's nice because, you have a brokerage, you have people around you, and it's a well-sustained business over hundreds of years. I mean, thousands at it that way. So it wound up being that right combination. And that's when I went into real estate. Now I have been out of the business. I tried to get out like 3 times, but I got sucked back in. And then after I had kids, it was pot committed. Because I started real estate young, I wanted to try other things, I felt kind of jealous that other people got to try different careers and their exploration.
That's interesting because normally it's the opposite, I feel like.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like sometimes, and I can even speak for myself, right? It's like, are you truly, what's the true goal with what you're trying to accomplish in life, right? Like, are you so attached, is it like for me, I'm just rambling now, but to try to get my point across, it's like, I love traveling. I love the idea of freedom and flexibility to be wherever I want to be and still produce an income.
Right.
So like, am I so attached to this identity as a real estate agent where there's so many different avenues and careers to still be able to accomplish the freedom flexibility piece and be anywhere? And I find, I'm just curious of, what that you got in and out multiple times because you did want to try a couple different things where normally it's the opposite. It's like, no, I want to be this.
Yeah. I mentioned, and it was kind of a setup because I figured eventually we'd talk about this. I had an eclectic background, right? So I had these different seasons. And I'm a big believer in you don't know something until you try it. And because I was 23 when I got in the business. Nowadays, that's normal.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Kids actually go to college because they want to sell real estate. But, for us, like when we got into the business, being young was exceptional. I didn't know other people that were doing it at that age. Actually, that's not true. I went through licensing with like 2 kids I graduated with, but we were the first of that path,
Right.
But I still wanted to try some different things. I did, even though I had that entrepreneurship bug, and I say it's genetic. I don't really know where it came from because both my parents, my dad was an attorney, but he worked for the state. So he always had state benefits, lots of protection. He worked in a very insulated environment. My mom sold, and certainly if you don't, it was mostly commission. And, you know, if you know anything about medical device, obviously selling is very important to be successful. And she was very successful, but she was still in an insulated environment to some extent, you know, benefits, all that stuff. So I always kind of had in the back of my head, like, am I doing the right thing? Even though I was on a really good trajectory, I still was like, you know, I wonder what it's like. So I actually left and I went into software sales, which was like a slam dunk. But the company that I went to was in the middle of a huge remod. They just got bought out by a venture capital firm. They were trying to dump that venture capital firm and get a higher acquisition because the C-suite was looking for that cheddar. And yeah, well, it wound up being a little more nefarious motivations on their end. But I was sitting there and I was making, you know, it was like a decent base salary, we'll say. You know, it was something that if you had been in real estate for a couple years, you'd be happy. But I also was like, I'm not making any commission because we didn't have a product to sell because they were transitioning.
Right.
And so I did like 3 months of that. And I was like, I'll just go sell real estate. Now, ironically, I still was in that exploratory phase. So I went and became a lender. And I am so thankful because I think everything I've done has had a higher purpose. Becoming a lender, mind-opening. I mean, just completely eye-opening to how working with clients and like, in particular, when I have listings, you know, one of my, you know, strengths, at least that what I think is a strength, I'm going to probably talk too highly of myself.
It's okay. You're allowed to.
Yeah, I mean, isn't that's the dynamic, I suppose. Someone knows me is watching and like, okay. But anyway, being a lender, it's nice. Like I get an offer and I look at the pre-approval and I'm like, okay, I know the red flags, the stuff that may not necessarily stand out to someone else, or I can call the lender and I can ask some questions that may be a little bit more advanced or just poignant, not necessarily advanced. And that helps me determine if this really is as strong of a buyer as we're looking for, because especially when you had multiple offers, it's like, great, the highest price isn't always your best buyer. So it helped me a lot in that scenario. And then after lending, I was like, okay, cool. I like this. I wanted to use the financial part of my brain, but realized probably not my highest and best use. And then I went and became a team leader / manager for a Keller Williams for a year. And then I had my first kid, and was like, sales is actually better. And oh boy, there's some operating principles out there like, you should not have said that, but I just did. So I went back into sales, and it's been kind of the happily ever after story.
No, that's awesome. What made you go back to what made you really get into it? Was it just the experience of you enjoying the process of you buying your own home? Like, you know, the looking for the home, the offer process and negotiations. Was it simply just that, or did you end up having some sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Passion for real estate at that time?
To be totally candid, it was more of the equivalent of like if you were to say, hey, I want to open a franchise, and you just went to the franchise website and you're like, okay, this one makes the most sense for me. That was probably more of how I felt about it, because I was like, I want to go the entrepreneurship route. A lot of like true franchises, like my brother and I were talking about opening like a gym at that point in time. And it was intriguing, but also my brother, he's 11 years older than me, different phase of life, way more capital, you know, and being partners with him in that dynamic also seemed like it would be tough, like on our relationship. So it was more of a happenstance. And like I said, I'm just more of a go out and try it kind of guy. And so that's ultimately what I did. I just tried it. I wound up being good at real estate. At least I think so. Like not right away necessarily, but I understood the basics. The only thing I really had going for me at the very beginning is I was way too cocky. I was very full of myself. And at a time where the market was really depressed, that wound up being the thing that helped me stand out. Now I'm just more of a traditional realtor where I'm like, okay, we'll see what happens.
What year did you end up actually getting your license?
2011.
Okay,
So
so we're the same year.
okay, I was February. When were you?
I got licensed in August.
Okay, look, let me tell you that 6 months makes a difference, John.
Well, I tell people, I tell people all the time, it's, getting into real estate at that time it is a huge benefit for me and for others like us that, made it through, not just 08, 09, 2010, but we got the tail end of, in
Yeah,
my opinion, of what was bad, but we still got the experience of foreclosures, short sales, and everything else in between of, walking through a home and being able to say, okay, well, let's go FHA or not. HUD
you're right.
homes, you know how many agents don't even know what a HUD home is, or a
Yeah,
foreclosure, or how to handle a short sale, that's licensed right now.
yeah.
So
Or do a
we
request
got
a remedy.
we got lucky that
Yeah,
we came in during that time.
yeah. My wife actually said, she was like, the funny thing, because the market's obviously had a little bit of a shift. And she said, I think you actually do better in this market than you do just the craziness of the last, 3 to 5 years. And
Yeah,
I'll go with it because if she says it, I'm just going to take it as truth. But I do think it's true. It's like, look, this is the chance to differentiate in a market where we have a lot of realtors. Someone who's been through the request of remedies, that understands, yeah, will this go FHA? Just went through a VA scenario where I had the buyer. And I feel like every time you go VA, it's like, look, it's just a roll of the dice. Like, I see some things, but will they see it?
right.
Well, the appraiser saw it. The listing agent is started their career in this more hustle bustle, conventional 20%, 50,000
Yeah,
appraisal guarantee market. So she didn't actually have a lot of experience in the VA. So it wound up being beneficial though, because at least I had been through it and actually gone through repair and, was able to collaborate to get it to the closing table. And we did, and didn't lose a day on it either. We actually closed early.
yeah. It's just some of those things I try to relate to agents as much as possible. Just practicing your conversation flow, practicing just how to have a conversation. The last 2, 3, 4 years, it's been pretty easy to attract clients. Now it's
Yeah.
been harder to get buyers into contract. I'll give you that. But as far as buyers and sellers coming out and wanting to do something, it's been pretty easy. Whereas, we're moving into a time where it's going to take some skill sets, to
Yeah.
actually get buyers, comfortable and confident in the market, and getting a seller comfortable and confident in the market, to be able to sell and buy and all of those things. But Greg, I'm curious, when you got into, and you're like, hey, I'm going to go into real estate and I'm going to go 100% commission. Supporters, doubters, did you have people in your corner?
Yeah. I think my parents probably doubted me. But I had, at the time, my friends were confused. Just no one really knows. Like, real estate is a lot more approachable now because, especially like in the perspective of, I was 23 years old getting in the
Yeah.
business, and I think we're around the same age. So like, the
Yeah.
dynamic.
I was 22.
Um, yeah. So same age, same year. I had probably more doubters than supporters, but the nice thing about it, it was kind of liberating because I was like, I'll go out and do whatever I want. So, my first breakout was because I felt like I had nothing to lose, because I was like, look, I'll try this. And if it doesn't work, I'll just move on. But I also
Yeah.
had some ideas that I wanted to try. So I actually branded myself as the high five agent, and I would high five my clients. I'd make these really silly YouTube videos. And that's actually where I got my first traction. And probably where I get the most flack now is that I'm just like a regular business dude. And, and besides some of my vernacular, I'm not the high five agent anymore. But it was liberating, to be honest, to not have a ton of support. I had friends that were, because being young in the business was weird. I had friends that
Yeah.
used their parents' realtor, and I had to learn how to work around that. And it caused me to be better, to learn more, to kind of, suck it up and learn, because sometimes they use people that I knew pretty well. And,
Yeah.
the first thing you want to do is hate on them and be like, oh, well, they don't, blah, blah, blah. But it was a good
Right.
lesson of being like, maybe I should see if I can buy coffee or lunch and learn from them in their business. So
Yeah.
not a ton of support. A lot of, I think, idle curiosity, certainly some haters. But yeah, not a ton of support, to be honest.
You think of you think about it. We were probably part of the tail end of, you're supposed to go to college to get that stable job. Like
Yeah.
I tell people, like, my parents didn't force us to go to college. It was kind of implied, but it wasn't
Yeah.
like forced. But it was still back then, go to college, get a degree, get a good job. Well,
Yep.
when we got out of school, the job market wasn't really the hottest thing out there. So,
Yeah.
so I totally get it. And then, being so young, I always say my friends weren't buying homes. We were 22 years old, just graduated college. We weren't buying houses. So,
Yeah.
I had to figure it out. And for me, it was leads and investors, is how I cut teeth. So,
Good for you, man. Better than me.
so
My
dive in.
patience with investors, it's like you got to be like a certain type of investor.
Well, I was just talking to one of our newer agents today about an investor. I said, the one thing that you have to do with an investor is you have to demand their respect, and you have to you have to show them that you're the expert and you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because investors are just as flaky as the next one.
Yeah.
They'll go over here, and they think they know everything more than what you do. But you don't need to work with every investor. You need to work with a handful, and then those
Yep.
handful will typically feed you. But I want so dive into the first couple years. Success, struggles. What did you focus on to grow your business?
So it was mostly the marketing, YouTube videos, clever, content. I pushed a lot. I mean, back then, it was like scraping data from my Facebook page, and like, it was like you take your Facebook contacts, you get a Yahoo account, you can strip all the emails, send emails out. So, having an email blast, trying to, do happy birthdays on Facebook. But it was mostly my videos, because I had some videos go real estate viral. So not like crazy, like
Sure.
viral now it's a lot easier to go viral now. That's someone's going to disagree, but I know what I'm
Sure.
trying to say. So I went like somewhat viral, and that helped me build it up. I started out at, well, my actual career, I started out at one brokerage, but then really started selling at another.
Sure.
And they had leads, and I would pay for them. It's something that, like, fundamentally I wouldn't do now, but being abnormally young in a business, it wound up being helpful. And because I just needed people to work with to do a good job to start the referrals.
Yeah.
And that was the key at that point in time. And so, I'd have some people that I knew. I'd have, I did do, like, I was really involved in Rotary up in Dublin when I lived up there.
Okay.
I did a lot of extracurriculars that kind of helped expand my network. So it was kind of the shotgun approach. And, the one advantage was I was young enough, I didn't have kids, so I could do everything. So I just
Yeah.
did everything.
Yeah.
First couple of
I
years,
always
though, not so bad. Compared to the income you could make at corporate at the time, like if you made 50,000, like in 2011, you were kind of crushing it coming out of college.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, okay, you take out business expenses, splits, et cetera. You still have to make quite a bit of money to get there, but the comparison was not so bad. So it was worth the risk. And, as long as I was making some money, and my goal was to just grow year over year. And that's what I did until one day I hit the eject button and went into software sales.
It's one of those things I always say, making $100,000 in corporate would be like, in my opinion, and I'm just making numbers up, but, would be like making 70, 75 in real estate.
Yeah.
because you have a lot more freedom, flexibility. You're not clocking in, clocking out. You don't have to answer to anyone other but than yourself. You can sleep in one day and stay up late the next. You know what I mean? So it's like, I totally get what you're saying with that.
Yeah.
So when you back and forth, going, in real estate, and then, your different career paths that you were trying out, what year was it when you really kind of made that decision to go all in on real estate? And while you were doing these other careers, were you still doing real estate part-time, or was it like, I'm done, I have my license, but I'm not focused on that?
So when I was out, I really tried to commit to being out,
Sure.
which I think was appropriate for the goal of trying something else. Like take away the safety net to some extent,
Sure.
um, because the goal was to truly try a different career path and see if that's something that I liked. So when I was in those, when I was a lender, I couldn't sell real estate. When
Right.
I was in software sales, that was probably the most pure one, where it was like, look, I'm really just going to try to do this career. Because also I wanted to, I've paid people and I know that they're making an investment in me. So I felt like it was the most respectful to, give them that attention. After I left being a manager at the Keller Williams office, that was 2018, because it was my daughter was born in February. I had left at the end of 2017, so basically going into the new year, and just hit it as hard as I could. And so that's been full commitment since then. I needed my big why. That's the thing, is without the big why, I was a little more aimless. But you know what?
Yeah.
That was me trying to figure out if there was something else out there. And I wouldn't come on this podcast and talk about it if I weren't proud of the fact that I tried other things, because it's not your
Yeah.
conventional real estate story. And I think it rounded me out, because I went into real estate, then went corporate, then went back into real estate, and also did some other things around it. So I thought that was helpful, if anything. But 4 years fully committed, and no regrets, other than if I had not got out of the business, man, I'd probably leave, $25,000, $50,000 in commissions, because, you get out of the business, that is the cost, right? You can't
Yeah.
blame someone who said, hey, I didn't realize, because, hey, you know what? I didn't even realize where I was. So
Yeah.
that would be the only potential regret. But big picture, I'm successful enough or proud of what I've accomplished that no regrets.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I want to kind of fast forward, to the future of where you kind of want your business to go, and kind of, how you're thinking about business. What's something that you're looking to accomplish, within the next 12 months?
So my goal is to sell 10 plus million per year. I have like a team, but I think there are two types of people that have teams. There are teams where, well, there's more than two types, but some people build teams for, honestly, it builds a reputation, recognition, and it helps them kind of build up a momentum.
Yeah.
That's not my goal. My goal is to have infrastructure to make sure I'm not missing my kids' soccer games. But also, daycare is like $3,000 a month. So I need to be able to sustain, a life that they deserve, and, also a life that I feel like I deserve. But at this point, the big why is them.
Yeah.
So the goal is to sell 10 plus million. I'm a much more, I am business minded. I have a business plan, but I also am much more organic. And hey, I like to see where my business is taking me and use that momentum to make the next decision for me. So like, I thought I would never have anyone ever help me. I had a team early on, because my first team was recognition. I was like, look at me, I have a team.
Yeah.
And that failed because that was the goal. Now it's about, all right, I thought I'd never have someone help me again, but it's like, hey, you know what? Like, there's a win-win. There are people out there who are looking for opportunities, and I used to be them when I was new in the business.
Yeah.
So work with them, provide that opportunity. It's extra money for them, extra opportunity. It's mentoring as well. Not even necessarily sitting down and mentoring, just, hey, this is how I'm doing business. You can see it, and you become an integral part of it. So in the future, it's not like I'm not like, hey, I want to sell 50 million in real estate. That's not necessarily the kind of guy I am. I'd like to do 10 million plus, just because that puts me at the area where I know I can provide for my family the way that I want to. And if I fall short of it, things aren't totally destroyed, but if I exceed it, then I can see where I need to adjust my business plan and continue to grow. I'm going to turn this light on. It got dark.
It's awesome.
Oh no,
it's awesome.
Dark. Sorry.
It's awesome that that you're thinking that way, because I always tell people, in order for us to really scale our businesses, you really need to build a team, and it doesn't always have to be 10 buyers agents or 4 agents. It could be support staff. It could be we're utilizing now a couple of different virtual assistants. It could be a showing agent. Like you said, there's what I found, and with us building our team was, new agents, like you said, they are looking for opportunities, and some of the most experienced agents need someone to help them take some things off of their plate to provide, their clients and things, better service, better communication, or just wanting to do more business. And then you got these other agents over here that are really looking for like ways to become a real estate agent. And, you can mesh those two to create that win-win. So
definitely,
I think a lot of times agents kind of get in their own way with some of that stuff, as far as, I need to be touching every piece of my business. Going back to your buy, sell, trade, if that guy the owner was looking over your shoulder every single time, and having you, oh, we can't sell for that, or, oh, you can't do this, or, oh, you can't do that, you're never going to learn, or you're never going to grow, or you're never going to scale. Right. So
that's very true.
No, that's awesome. What's something you're looking to accomplish in the next 5 years?
Take more vacations. You're over here bragging about vacations, and I'm like, I really need to carve out some time. But for real, it's so easy in this business to head down, and just keep grinding it out. And part of the reason that I wanted someone to help me was so that I could take the vacations. But really, the first thing it's done is just allow me to be a better dad with the existing obligations. So, besides like business wise, the goal is 10 million plus every year, and let it organically grow from there to what it needs to be. But then on the personal side is be able to enjoy life a little bit more, and also be able to be a more involved part of the community, not just with money, but with time, and not just with time, but with money. We just had a neighborhood block party, and everyone was stressing about pooling money together. And it was nice to be like, look, let me throw a sign in front of a bounce house. I'll just take care of it on my own, just wipe it away from everyone else. It wasn't about marketing, although IRS, just so you know, it was about marketing. But really it was about, hey, look, I can help solve a problem, and find a win-win. And, to be totally honest, a certain level of success makes that easier. So that's my 5-year goal: take more vacations, and, be able to help people more with the fruit of my labor.
No, that's awesome. I've been asking a lot of people this a lot lately that have come on, the Tell Me More podcast, because it was asked to me about a month and a half ago now. What is a legacy goal of yours? What is a goal that you're looking to accomplish when you're no longer here?
That's a deep question. It's funny because I'm super into genealogy and heraldry and all of that. And for some reason, it's almost kicked me the opposite way, where I'm like, you know what? I just want to be content and put my kids in a position where they can do what makes them happy. So money allows opportunity. because time equals money. So ultimately, if I want to be able to pass something down through generations, it has to be money through, investing in real estate, stock market, just accumulating wealth, making the right financial plays, that is a big part of it. I don't need to have like a bench with my name on it at the park or something like that. That's not necessarily cool if it happened, if people felt so moved by me. But that's not my ultimate goal. What I would generationally want to pass along is opportunity. My parents worked really hard. They provided me a lot of opportunity. I've done stupid things in my life that, to be honest, they've been able to help me. It was easier to say I'm going to go into a commission only job knowing that I had support. I didn't want to call on it. And so that was a motivating factor. But it's nice to know that. So like if my kids want to go into real estate or they want to, go into entrepreneurship of their own, I would love to be able to provide them a knowledge base, because I think knowledge is the most valuable, as well as, a financial base to be able to give them the encouragement to go explore. And also if they want to go be a corporate person and they want to make like, 85,000 a year, that they have my love and support. And they also know that, I'm doing the right things to put them in a financial position that if their kids want to be entrepreneurs, that it's not just riding on their income. That would be the generational part. But I don't need a tree that someone's going to cut. Be like, should we cut it down or not? Like, just cut it down. You can burn the firewood. It's
fine. I love it. I want to be respectful of your time. I appreciate you so much for taking time out of your day to join me today. So I always end with this one question, and it's if you could give our audience one piece of advice that you wish you had, either starting your career or one that you just kind of give out that you think is super important to real estate agents, what would that be?
Starting out, it is about focusing on your goal, because this was a theme that came up in our conversation, but you're going to hit way more rejection than you are acceptance, especially in a time where there are so many real estate agents like if you get into the business today, there are a lot more real estate agents than there are homes. So stay focused on what the goal is. Set a realistic timeline for you to try this out and succeed, and explore all options along the way. And some people this business is not for, but honestly, the personality traits of people I've seen be successful in this are all over the board. So if this is something you really want to do, you need to stay committed to it, and overcome the objections, because you may have a lot of haters along the way. But that a lot of times is the recipe for the best success.
I love it. Greg, thanks so much for coming on and sharing your journey. Those that are watching, his website is at the bottom of the screen. So if you guys are looking to buy or sell here in Central Ohio, if you're another real estate agent and you just want to pick Greg's brain about real estate and how he thinks about it and building his business, please do not hesitate to reach out to him. But Greg, for those that are listening in, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Gleaveshometeam.com is a great way if you're looking to just validate that I have the skill set out there before you reach out. I love a text or a phone call at 614-565-9507. Email Greg at Greg Gleaves, but let's be honest, Gleaves Home Team that you've seen scroll across the bottom of the page is easier for you to reference. You could Google me. Everything on the first page is positive. So you're more than welcome to Google me. Love to work with you if you're a potential client, but if you're also a new agent in real estate, you don't have to be in my brokerage. I have been in the management position. And one of the things that I enjoy most is helping mentor, because iron sharpens iron, and the better that our industry is as a whole, the better off we're viewed by those who use us.
No, I love what you just said. That's the reason why I do what I do. Like you, me, real estate has been, a blessing to me in my life, and I'm just trying to help other agents, accomplish the same thing. So,
yeah,
Greg, thanks so much for your time today. Thanks for coming on, sharing your story and your journey. And if I can ever do anything for you, please let me know.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, John.
Of course. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.